When it comes to electrified vehicles, Lexus is certainly no stranger. The company was one of the first manufacturers to offer a hybridized vehicle back in 2005 with the RX crossover. However, that was then. Today, a lot of manufacturers are moving very quickly toward battery electric vehicles, and this is where sadly Lexus and parent company Toyota are playing a little bit of catch up. However, today we are driving the company's first fully electric vehicle. This right here is the brand new 2023 RZ450e. It's built on the same dedicated eTNGA architecture as the Toyota BZ4X, and with over 300 horsepower and up to 220 miles of range, it certainly has the specs that we demand from a vehicle that wears the Lexus badge. So as you can see today, we're actually out here in Encinitas, California once again to drive this all-new RZ, and the big question I want answered, was this all-electric crossover truly worth the long wait? Stay tuned to find out. So we have seriously been waiting a long time for Lexus to finally give us a fully dedicated battery electric vehicle. And I have to say, the new RZ, finally seeing it in person in the actual outdoor environment as opposed to an auto show environment, it certainly looks very polarizing. But before we start talking about the styling, let me go ahead and show you guys what's underneath the hood, because that's always, for me, the big question when it comes to an EV. Is there a frunk? Just like the Toyota BZ4X and the Solterra on which it's based, there is no frunk because Lexus, what they did here is they stacked up the front motor of this vehicle, which, by the way, the front motor is significantly more powerful versus the all-wheel drive versions of the BZ4X. So what the RZ essentially comes with, the 450e, is supposed to show where it fits in the lineup in terms of power output. So we have dual electric motors as standard, along with a 71.4 kilowatt hour battery pack. That battery pack is interesting because it's actually the smaller battery pack that's built by Panasonic that Toyota doesn't use in the all-wheel drive BZ4X, which is technically a bigger battery pack. Lexus says that because this car is built in Japan, they just wanted to keep it simple, and that's where, again, Panasonic is easiest to send them over the battery for this vehicle. But like I said earlier, dual electric motors up to 313 horsepower. What we have here is a 150 kilowatt motor in the front, along with an 80 kilowatt e-axle at the back of this vehicle. So you get a total of 313 or 308, depending on whether you guys measure in imperial or metric horsepower. Torque is around 320 pound-feet. Now, Lexus actually doesn't quote that torque figure, but if you add the torque output of the front and the rear electric motor, it comes out to 320. That's roughly about 100 horsepower more versus the BZ4X with all-wheel drive. That's going to translate into a 0 to 60 performance in 5 seconds. That's what Lexus claims. And it has a top speed of just over 100 miles an hour, which, again, it's an EV. They don't typically are built for super high, fast speeds. Lexus doesn't quote towing figure, which I assume this car is not recommended to tow, which is kind of similar to the BZ4X. And it has a 6.6 kilowatt onboard charger, which I'll talk about the charge port later. This vehicle will accept up to 150 kilowatts of max DC fast charging, which that number is pretty below average. A lot of these luxury EVs are going to the much quicker 800 volt architecture. This still uses the 400 volt architecture. It all goes out through a 1-speed reduction gear transmission. Like I said earlier, their direct 4 all-wheel drive is going to be standard equipment. As this car sits, it weighs in at a little over 4,600 pounds, so it's about 200 pounds heavier versus a BZ4X, which I'm going to assume comes into the stronger motor and just the fact that this car has a little bit more equipment. But let's go ahead and close up the hood of this vehicle, which, as you can see, is held up by a prop rod that's very un-Lexus-like, so I don't really like that initially. But this particular one here that I'm showing you is very polarizing because this has the two-tone exterior paint. It's a $1,200 upcharge, so you have kind of a black front grille with the black hood, along with this new color that's called Ether. It's a light blue exterior with the standard full LED headlights. This paint is definitely very interesting. In fact, we've got the car confection guys in the background filming an Ether RX as well, or RZ as well, for their video, and that has just the single monotone spec, which, let me know in the comments below if you guys like the two-tone. It definitely is a little polarizing for me. They also offer it in a gray if you guys don't like the blue, which should help it stand out a little bit less. But regardless, you can see the front end has the current Lexus design philosophy here. Instead of a spindle grille, this is known as a spindle body because it doesn't require an actual opening for the grille because this is an EV. The Lexus logo there, this is the first Lexus vehicle to offer an illuminated logo. It lights up at night whenever the headlights are on. That's a $200 upcharge. It's not standard, it's optional on both the premium or the luxury trim. This one here that I'm showing you is the luxury trim. You have a camera along with integrated parking sensors. And then you can see here, you've got their full LED headlights, which are standard. You've got LED low and high beams, and LED daytime running light, LED turn signals, no fog lights. However, Lexus for some reason doesn't offer their triple beam premium headlights on this vehicle. I imagine they will at some point, but I think what the company is trying to do here is they're trying to simplify the production aspect of this car, because they're trying to gauge and see how many people actually end up purchasing one of these vehicles here in the US. Now you can see the front splitter is body colored here. It tries to look a little bit more aggressive and sporty. However, you're also probably noticing there is no F Sport package available on this car. Again, another marketing decision on behalf of Lexus, which they could eventually offer one at some point, depending on the demand. Now, this vehicle is built on the eTNGA architecture. It's a fully dedicated battery electric structure that also underpins the BZ4X and the Subaru Solterra. However, for the RZ, Lexus did make this car a little bit bigger. As you guys notice, RZ shows that it's kind of like an electric version of the RX, which RZ, Lexus tells us, stands for Radiant Zero, so the Z stands for zero emissions. Its overall length is around 189.2 inches long. This is about 5 inches longer than a BZ4X. It's about 2 inches shorter than the current generation Lexus RX, but about 6 inches longer versus the Lexus NX. So again, it sits right in the middle of the lineup, although it definitely gives you more of the proportions of an RX. Its wheelbase is 112.2. That matches the BZ4X. However, it's also the same length as the new Lexus RX. So it's a pretty good size dimensionally. I think it's going to appeal to a lot of people in terms of its mid-size footprint. It offers around 7.8 inches of ground clearance, which is a fairly decent amount. Remember, Subaru also makes their version, which is marketed to be a little bit more off-road capable, so this has pretty similar ground clearance. You can see over here, you've got these kind of gloss black wheel arches along the fender flares that also go along the side sill. You can get your choice between either an 18-inch wheel, which the 18-inch wheel is going to give you the range that you want at around 220 miles. This one here, because it has the 20-inch wheels, which are standard on the luxury package, drops the range to 196 miles. I know 196 miles is not good. However, when I tested the BZ4X, I suspect this vehicle should do a little bit better in the real world. We'll have to wait until we get our hands on one to see if that's true. You can see it's got a 235/50 R20 tire, and then the rear actually has a fatter tire. It's a 255/45 R20. So they decided to give the RZ a little bit more of an aggressive stance. It also is about an inch wider and an inch lower versus the BZ4X, which again gives it a more premium, slightly more sportier look. Now over here you can see this is the charge port door. It comes standard, of course, with DC fast charging and a J1772 plug. This door right here, there's no cover for this outlet. It seals off right here when you have the door closed. But Lexus says it'll take around 9.5 hours to fully charge this vehicle when you're on a level 2 with a 48 amp circuit. If you find a fast charger, this should go from 10 to 80% in about 30 minutes. So it's not bad, but remember, it's got a slightly smaller 71.4 kilowatt hour battery pack. Some competitors go up to 100 kilowatt hour plus, and those are the ones that are gonna give you even better range. Now, Lexus did also mention that illuminated Lexus logo also lights up when you have the vehicle plugged in. The charge port door here, as you saw, is manual. It's nothing super fancy where it's power operated like some competitors. You also have this black painted side mirror. These are also electrically folding. They have cameras and whatnot. This model here, because it has the two-tone, also has the black roof, which definitely looks good with the ether color. And then you also have a panoramic glass roof, which is standard. My tester has the optional electrochromatic roof, where you can touch a button. You can basically make the roof transparent or opaque, depending on if you want the sun beating down on you. And then just like the RX, you kind of have this like floating D-pillar here, which is an interesting design element. I definitely like the way this car looks from certain angles. I think it's the best looking out of the Solterra and the BZ4X cousins, of course, that are built on this platform. Now looking at the rear, you can see a lot of the traditional Lexus design cues here. You have their signature light blade, a full LED light bar that goes along the entire rear width of the vehicle. You have the Lexus badge here spelled out because this is what they started doing on the NX a couple of years ago. And then you have a lot of badging here, RZ450E, the E being electric, 450 showing where it fits in the lineup in terms of power, and then Direct 4, that's the all-wheel drive system this car has, because it has an electric motor in the front and electric motor in the rear. The rear bumper, you can see, is completely black. It doesn't have any kind of different, more aggressive spoilers. You do have a spoiler kind of up here. This is Lexus claims for aerodynamics, and it also kind of helps the air run down the rear window and kind of helps to shuffle the water off or remove the water, because as you notice, there's no rear wiper back here, just like on the BZ4X and the Subaru Solterra. It cleans up the rear design, but I also think it's slightly a cost-cutting measure. I would prefer to have an actual rear wiper back here. Now, looking at the cargo area, this car didn't have a frunk, so you're hoping that it's going to have a bigger trunk area versus some competitors, and it has a pretty usable amount of space. This is around 24 cubic feet of total space with the second row seats up. There's no third row on this vehicle. If you fold down the second row, Lexus says the max amount of cargo space is around 55 cubic feet, which is actually good. This is about 10 more cubic feet than what you're going to get in the Lexus RX and in the Lexus NX. And you can thank that, of course, for the packaging because of that skateboard battery architecture. Underneath here, you can see you do have a pretty deep storage area where Lexus does include a level 1 mobile charger for this vehicle. However, there is no spare tire. Instead, Lexus is just going to give you a fix-a-flat kit along with an air compressor. So if you want a spare tire, you may have to consult your dealer or the aftermarket. So let's go ahead and move on to the interior of the new Lexus RZ. Now, I forgot to mention this on the outside, but this vehicle also has the digital latch door handles, just like on the NX and the RX, which means those door handles, you basically just push a button sensor on the door handle that opens the door. Same thing with the inside here, where you just push this, that opens the door for you. As I get in and shut the door has a nice solid sounding thunk. Remember, this is built on the same ETNGA architecture, and it definitely gives you that typical solid feel that you expect from the Lexus brand. Now, first stepping inside this interior, you can see if you've been in some modern Lexus products, this is going to look very familiar. This interior color is like kind of like a dark gray, graphite gray. And then this luxury trim that I'm showing you also has the upgraded ultra suede interior. Actually, this is the first Lexus vehicle that doesn't have an ounce of actual real leather. You get a choice between either New Lux or this ultra suede. And Lexus offers a gray, a palomino, and a new thunderstorm interior, which is kind of like a light blue with macadamia light gray accents. This one here is the darker interior color on the luxury trim. But let me first show you guys the key fob. You can see this is the current corporate Lexus fob that we've seen on many other models before. It has your usual lock, unlock, open up the trunk, panic. You can also remote start the vehicle from the actual fob itself, in addition to using the Lexus Inform app or Lexus Interface app. But starting the vehicle up, you can see the start-stop button here is mounted high. Push that button over here and you can see it has the same typical startup chime noise that we've heard in other Lexus products. And my tester here, as you can see, does not have the steer-by-wire technology with that yoke steering wheel. This is the standard steering wheel. Lexus says that that will be coming at a later date. They haven't announced when or how much it'll cost, but you can see this is the same steering wheel that you get from the Lexus NX and the Lexus RX. It's a nice 3-spoke design. Feels really smooth. I love the leather on the wheel with the contrasting or the fancier stitching that you get. You have paddles on the wheel. This is to control the regen braking, which Lexus offers 4 different modes of regen braking. And then you also have pretty nice materials here on the door panel. You can see there's a soft touch injection molded plastic, more ultra suede here along the door panels, padded area down here where I'd rest my elbows. The window controls, you have automatic up-down windows for all 4, which they have a really high quality feel to the window switches themselves. I am noticing, however, there isn't really any wood or chrome or aluminum trim in this interior. Instead, Lexus decided to go with illumination to give us a fancier feel, which at night they call it shadow illumination, where it has like this kind of interesting texture and light show that you can change the color on the luxury trim, or it's a multicolor ambient lighting. Here in the daylight, you can see, however, it looks a little bit drab. There is kind of like this wood look trim here, which is actually plastic, but it actually has a pretty decent texture to it, and it looks good with the dark gray. If you guys go for the premium grade, you'll just kind of have a glossy piano black plastic, which you'll see here, and so forth. But looking at the rest of this instrument panel, you can see this portion of the dash is a soft touch injection molded plastic. It's the same thing over here, although I would have liked to see kind of like leather stitching along this portion of the dash. Just like on other Lexus products, you have the standard 14-inch touchscreen here. This is part of the Lexus interface system, which includes, as you can see, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The screen itself is a very beautiful resolution. It's quick and it's snappy. It includes over-the-air updates. I like how the climate is kind of built onto this lower portion of the screen, which it stays there all the time, where you can adjust it and manipulate this portion of the screen where you want to go to your Apple CarPlay. You can also go back to the Lexus system. There's the actual GPS, which is a cloud-based navigation system. It only works if you have actual signal. This won't work if you are in an area that has no cell phone signal. And you can also change a few settings here. This is where you adjust the drive modes. There's 5 different drive modes: normal, sport, eco, range, and custom. The range mode is new, of course, to the RZ, where this essentially turns off the climate control and it gives you more range, and also adjusts everything to where it works a little bit better. So this all, again, is very familiar. Nothing really super new about that. Now over here on the instrument panel, what I don't like is this is their electric vehicle, and you have this really tiny display. It's a 7-inch display, the same one that's in the RX and in the NX. Toyota has like a fully digital 12-inch display in other models like the Tundra and Sequoia. Why are we not getting something like that in the RZ? Now, obviously, if I change the drive mode, you can kind of change the color of that to be either blue or red, depending if you're in sport or the other modes. So again, it's not very customizable. It doesn't look all that impressive, and that's kind of just a letdown. There is also a 10-inch heads-up display that is standard on the Limited. It's optional on the premium models, where you can basically put your driving information there, your speed and whatnot, turn-by-turn directions. That looks nice. But again, really disappointed to see this is not a fully digital display. The steering wheel is a power, tilt, and telescoping cluster, which offers a good amount of adjustability and range. You also have a heated steering wheel. These are heated and ventilated seats with a 3-person memory on the driver's side, which is nice. They adjust in like 14 different ways. The horn sounds good. It doesn't sound puny. It's very fitting of the car, of the size of this vehicle and whatnot. And then down here in the center stack, you can see there is a full 360 camera, which this car, just like other Toyota products, gives you the perimeter scan, which is kind of useless, although the graphics and resolution have gotten better over the years, which is nice, but that kind of really isn't useful. If I put the vehicle into reverse, you can see there's your top-down 360 camera, and you have your backup camera with trajectory, parking sensors, and automatic parallel parking. So that definitely looks better, and you can hear the reverse chime is different versus other Toyota and Lexus products. Now over here you can see this is the first Lexus to get their dial-style shifter. This is a 1-speed reduction gear transmission. You push down on this ring, and then you go twist it to the left to go to reverse, push down and go to the right to go to drive. Just push down and that'll go into neutral. This is the same shifter that they've taken from the BZ4X, so it's pretty easy to use, and it also helps to save space. You have an electronic parking brake here, brake hold, and then your stability control off switch, wireless phone charging pad is over there, and then you can see cup holders and whatnot, along with 3 USB charging ports. That one there is for the CarPlay if you don't want to use wireless, and then you have 2 charging ports over there. Now, just like on the BZ4X, this vehicle also has what they call their radiant heater. So if I kind of use this little control here or go to the climate, you can also adjust it there. This turns on the auto mode or the radiant heater and the heated seats or the cooled seats, which definitely is nice to have. It basically, just like on the BZ, there's an area here where it kind of radiates heat onto your knees and onto your feet, which is supposed to kind of replace using the heater. It's also on the passenger side here, which is definitely nice to have in the cold. However, it does delete the glove box over here, just like on the BZ. To compensate, Lexus says you can use this area here as the glove box, which, as you can see, I put a couple of things in here. It's not covered or lockable, but it is certainly nice additional storage, but I wouldn't say that it's probably a replacement for a glove compartment. I think that's just Lexus marketing terms there. Over here you can see you've got a padded center console, which also opens up in 2 different ways. You can see opening that up, it offers a good amount of size. You can also open it up from this way. This is also padded, which is very comfortable. The rear view mirror you can see is auto dimming. My tester is missing the digital camera rear view mirror that you can get for an extra $200. And then you can see over here a lot of piano black trim. You have LED map lighting, and then right here the panoramic roof. For an extra $550, they'll give you the electrochromatic function, where if I push this little button here, you watch the roof, it goes from opaque to transparent, and you can see it lets in some light. If you don't get this feature, this is still going to be UV tinted to block out sunlight and heat, but with it you can see it definitely adds to the whole like tech feel of this cabin. This unfortunately doesn't open, and there is no actual retractable shade. Lexus says they did that because it's helped save weight and complexity. I guess so, but I think some people may prefer that. The luxury version also is the only vehicle to get the Mark Levinson 14-speaker sound system, which sounds good. If you don't go for the luxury, the premiums are going to have a 10-speaker premium audio system, which still sounds okay, but for you audiophiles out there, you're going to want the Mark Levinson system. So overall, the interior certainly has the traditional luxury, high-quality feel that I expect from Lexus. Would like to see an upgrade to the instrument panel here, and I would also like to see a little bit more wood and metal trim in here to kind of brighten up the cabin. But overall, it feels roomy, it feels spacious, and you can also see very nicely out of the actual front end of this vehicle. So let's go ahead and take a look at the back seat of the new RZ. And this is where Lexus actually did a pretty good job in terms of space. As I get back here, there's actually around 37.5 inches of legroom. That's about 1.5 inches more legroom versus the NX, and it actually has a little bit more space versus the RX as well. You can thank, of course, that skateboard platform where the floor is nice and flat over here. There's no actual hump for the center passenger where you can get 3 people across. In terms of features, you can see there's rear seat air vents. You have 3 level heated rear seats along with 2 USB charging ports and a 12-volt power outlet. In terms of foot space, I do wish that there was a little bit more foot space underneath the front seat, but you can see somebody who's 5'7" like myself, I can kind of get in, get pretty comfortable. I can cross my legs. There's a fairly good amount of headspace. The seats themselves actually do offer a recline function. So if you want to recline it, you use this little lever here. They fold down, obviously, but this is the standard position, and I can also recline it back a little bit for a more of a laid back position. I also like how Lexus carried over the Ultra Suede back here, which is definitely nice. It feels really high quality and comfortable. The bench themselves also feels pretty comfortable. There's an armrest that folds down and gives you 2 cup holders, and then you can see there's storage pockets here on both of the front seats, and then the materials back here are kind of carried through. You have soft touch materials, more of the Ultra Suede, of course, with a padded area here where you'd rest your elbows. Above me, you can see here this glass roof. This is with it in the opaque setting. So if I push this button here, actually that's the transparent, or that's the opaque setting. This is the transparent setting. So you can see it lets in a nice amount of light. The one thing, however, I'm sad to see is why is there this bar here that's separating the 2 panels of the sunroof? I would have just preferred this to be one continuous glass piece. Again, this roof doesn't open, but in terms of the rear seat space, you can see the RZ is definitely on the bigger end in terms of this segment of vehicles. So here we are finally behind the wheel of the first ever electric SUV from Lexus. This is called the RZ450e. It's built off of the same architecture as the BZ4X, which is not a great SUV on paper, but in the real world, when I lived with one, I was actually relatively impressed with the overall feel when I spent a full week with it. Now this model here, I want to test out the 0 to 60 because Lexus claims 5 seconds and it has about 100 more horsepower than the BZ. I have the drive mode here in Sport, which should give us full power. We're gonna brake torque it. And it definitely feels fast. All-wheel drive is standard. Wow. 0 to 60 in 4.95 seconds there. That's actually pretty good, and it's a smidge quicker versus the claim from Lexus, 5 seconds. I suspect this car will actually be a little bit faster. I tested that when I was going slightly more uphill. So if you guys are planning to buy this vehicle for quick acceleration, obviously that's not the point of this car, but it is significantly faster versus the BZ4X, and it definitely is noticeable. It's much appreciated, and when you compare it to other luxury vehicles in this segment, it also feels like it should have enough power for the majority of people who are planning to buy these vehicles. Now, the RZ does come with regen braking. There's 4 different levels. If you start pulling the paddles here, you can adjust the regen braking. It doesn't truly give you a one-pedal drive feature, but just in my short drive here, I am noticing that the one-pedal drive works okay. Put my foot down here. Oh yeah, that's pretty fast. I like that a lot, actually. The torque of this thing is just smooth, responsive. The transmission also is only a single gear, so it just kind of puts the power down immediately. That's kind of what you expect with an EV. And it just feels like it has enough power for this type of vehicle, so that's definitely good. Could Lexus do a performance version? Sure, I would love to see that, but Lexus is also kind of just trying out their hand at the electric space and seeing what their customer feedback and consumer feedback and whatnot's going to be. As you can see, I'm coming to it's slowing down here on its own, but it's not a full one-pedal drive. That's on max regen, so I would prefer if it had a little bit more regen to give me that full one-pedal drive effect. Because this vehicle is dual motor all-wheel drive, put my foot down here, it just goes. There's no wheel spin. It just has all that torque. And I also noticed this car has a electric sports sound, or at least Lexus doesn't call it that, but it definitely gives you that kind of whirring noise that you expect from an electric vehicle. Which is nice. I like the fact that it gives you that kind of visceral experience. It's also, it sounds like a more authentic noise versus some of the fake noises that I hear from some competing brands, like, for example, Hyundai or Kia uses that in the EV6. I don't always particularly love the electric sport sound, but overall, I think it definitely feels futuristic. It feels torquey. And then I also want to point out this model here that I'm driving does not have the steer-by-wire. So as you can see, I have the regular electric power steering assist, but not the steer-by-wire. We're going to hop into the car with the yoke in just a moment, and we'll show you guys a quick little clip of what that yoke is like to drive with the steer-by-wire. Lexus says that that is coming at a later date, but they haven't actually said when it's going to be coming to the US or for how much it will be. Making a U-turn here. This actually has a really tight turning radius, which is nice. Putting my foot down feels really good. I like the power. I like the visibility in this car, and the ride quality is also surprisingly good. We've got adjustable suspension, adaptive dampers, and with the 20-inch wheels, I will admit it is definitely on the firmer end, but I also appreciate that Lexus still kind of gave this a really plush ride quality. So if you want a smoother ride, go over the 18-inch wheels. It definitely feels a little bit hunkered down. You can feel that the center of gravity is low for this vehicle. It feels very much like the BZ4X did, but it also kind of gives me electric RX vibes. And I like that a lot because the RX is a wonderful driving vehicle. It feels just about as big. It has that planted, very stable, very secure, premium feel that you expect from a vehicle in this segment. So I think Lexus did a good job with the driving signature. I mean, a lot of these EVs, they're starting to kind of drive the same. The RZ is kind of similar in that regard, but let's go ahead and try out again 0 to 60 wise here. We're at about 75% state of charge. Put my foot down, no wheel spin, just lots of torque. 4.66 seconds there. Wow, now that is going slightly more downhill, but hey, I wasn't surprised. I expected this to be quicker. We'll have to wait until we get one back home to test for a full week, but let's go ahead and cue over to that driving footage with a model with the steer-by-wire, because I've never driven a car with a yoke, so let's go ahead and see what that experience is like. So here I've switched to an RZ with the steer-by-wire technology. Now, Lexus doesn't officially call this a yoke, but this is the first time I'm driving a vehicle with a steering wheel like this, and it's very strange. The one thing you'll notice right away is this is the most that it turns. Because of the steer-by-wire tech, it's able to infinitely adjust the steering ratio to turn more or less depending on your speed. So Lexus has set up this little course out here, and we're gonna see what this RZ is like once we get out there. This is gonna be strange. All right, my first time driving a vehicle with steer-by-wire and a yoke. Lexus says they've set up some really tight turns so I can really test out how it infinitely adjusts. And also remember, it adjusts based on your speed as well. So this is really, whoa, that's weird. Okay, that's super weird. Wow. Okay. I mean, I like how Lexus, unlike Tesla, which I haven't driven the Model S with the yoke wheel, allows you to adjust the steering ratio at different speeds, so that way you can get a feel for how you don't necessarily need to actually have the top of the wheel. Instead, you just kind of keep your hands on this, and it definitely gives you a lot of control, but it's weird. It is super weird. But okay, we finished this part here. I'm gonna back in the vehicle because Lexus said they wanted me to back it in as well. Put it into reverse here. So like basically when I turn the wheel this much, I'm anticipating it to turn about half as much, but it actually does twice what I expect. But it definitely gives you control. You have to kind of train your mind to be used to it at first, which is fine. It's new technology. Lexus basically says it's not available in the US just yet because they're still fine-tuning things, but I have to admit, it is really cool tech. So whenever they do offer this, I'm looking forward to spending a little bit more time with their steer-by-wire tech. So we've definitely been waiting a very long time for Lexus to finally give us a competitive long-range battery electric vehicle. And after spending a little bit of time with the brand new 2023 RZ, I have to say this vehicle surprised me, just kind of like the way that the BZ4X also surprised me. On paper, it is not a competitive EV. As you guys saw, slightly under 200 miles of range for this model here, along with charging speeds, which are pretty much average to slightly below average. However, the interior definitely is a high point. I like the infotainment technology, I like the comfortable seats, I like the high quality materials, and I also like the interior space in terms of the front, the back seat, and the cargo area. In terms of the driving dynamics, this is also a really nice driving car. It feels a lot like an electric version of the Lexus RX, which is a huge deal because Lexus RX is their best-selling vehicle. So if Lexus is able to capture those driving dynamics and the comfort and technology of that vehicle into this car, it should be able to sway a few Lexus shoppers who might be considering going all electric. Maybe they're considering a hybrid, and this is kind of Lexus's way to offer a fully battery electric vehicle. However, this is where the RZ does kind of show a little bit of its age, because Lexus took their time when they were developing this vehicle, and they benchmarked cars like the Audi e-tron, the Volvo XC40 Recharge, the Jaguar I-Pace, and of course the Tesla Model Y. That's the benchmark that everyone compares this vehicle to. At up to 220 miles of range, it does compare favorably with those vehicles minus the Tesla. However, a lot of those vehicles, something like the Audi e-tron, which has just been significantly refreshed, offers about 100 more miles of range. Same with the Tesla. And you can also look at a lot of non-premium brands to kind of get you that longer range. The Lexus does have its build quality, its reputation for reliability. And if you guys like the Lexus dealership experience, you're also going to like this vehicle, of course. Now, in terms of pricing, Lexus has started production of this vehicle at their plant in Japan. It's actually the same plant that builds the Lexus LC and, of course, the old Lexus LFA. This vehicle starts at around $59,500. Production started about 2 weeks ago at the end of January, so you should be seeing these vehicles show up at your Lexus dealerships here in the US very soon. This luxury version that I'm showing you is around $5,000 more. When you add in, of course, the $1,200 for the paint, the extra charge for the wheels, and the destination, this car here comes to a little over $66,000. I know 66 grand is a fairly good chunk of money. You could get a Tesla Model Y for the same, if not less money. And don't forget that the Tesla qualifies for the $7,500 federal tax credit, whereas the RZ is built in Japan. It does not qualify for the tax credit. I suspect Lexus will eventually move production of this vehicle, but we probably won't see an American-built version of this car and the BZ for at least another 2 years. Now, for those of you who are wondering, what if I want to drive farther than 200 miles? Well, Lexus does have a nice little program here where if you guys buy this vehicle for the first 3 years of ownership, you can basically take advantage of the dealership loaner vehicle program at any Lexus dealer across the country, where Lexus will allow you to borrow a loaner for up to 30 days, where you can use that vehicle to go on longer road trips. Lexus also says that they expect this car to be a second or a third vehicle, so they're okay with the range being a little bit less. But again, for those of you who charge an EV at home, you should expect to do most of your charging at home, which will kind of take away the sting of the fact that it slow charges at a DC fast charger. But overall, I think it's a decent first effort. But unfortunately, with the competition kind of moving forward every day, I think that Lexus is going to have to make some quick changes to this vehicle, especially in the range and in the charging speeds, if they want this car to remain competitive, because today it's about average, but I suspect in a couple of years, it'll definitely fall below average. Well, with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2023 Lexus RZ 450e. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.